AP World Units 1 and 2, let's go. So the three main things is we're going to see land-based empires united by belief systems and also the growth of trading cities. What are the empires we're talking about? I mean, in China, it's the Song Dynasty, and then they have a lot of tributary states around them in Korea and Vietnam and Cambodia with the Khmer Empire. Then states pop up in Southeast Asia to capitalize off trade to China, and that's going to be like Srivijaya and Majapahit. Another major land-based empire is going to be the Abbasid Caliphate, and then they're going to be surrounded by other Islamic states like the Delhi Sultanate in India, but Muslims don't take over the whole South Asian continent. Hey, Vijayanagara Empire. In Africa, we have the rise of the Kingdom of Mali, the Swahili Coast city-states, and also Great Zimbabwe, who's hanging out just like anyone wants some gold. Don't forget about Christian Europe. You have the Byzantine Empire, and then you also have medieval European kingdoms, and the Kievan Rus, who, spoiler alert, about to be conquered by the Mongols. Developing independently in the Americas, you have the Mexica or the Aztec Empire, you have the Inca in South America, and in North America, you have more sparsely populated civilizations like the Mississippian culture. The middle of this era is really punctuated by the Mongol conquest, but even they break apart into smaller land-based kingdoms. Part 2 coming up, how are these empires united by belief systems? AP World Units 1 and 2, how were these various land-based empires somewhat united by belief system? First up, in East and Southeast Asia, we have really Chinese culture is dominating this region, and so with that comes Confucianism. Even if a lot of these places weren't necessarily quote-unquote Confucian states, a lot of them, especially in Korea and Vietnam, we see incorporating Confucian ideas like filial piety into the systems they build. Another religion that's going to get settled in early in the Southeast Asian Indian Ocean region obviously is going to be Hinduism and Buddhism, but those states are going to have to quickly contend and absorb in new Muslims. Arguably the most influential belief system of this time period is going to be Islam. The Muslims are going to spread via both conquest, like in India, and via trade, like in Africa, to create Dar al Islam, or the House of Islam. And they're really unique in that they promote trade, they promote travel, which is why it spreads so quickly. In Europe, we've got the Christian church being really the only major institution that's providing any sort of unity or stability for now. And then even in the Americas, even though these are very distinct cultures, they are all worshiping some form of a sun god and other kind of natural deities. Next up, trading cities. AP World Units 1 and 2, let's talk about those trading cities. So there's really three main regional trading routes. The first that we're going to talk about is going to be the Silk Road, and really the prime destination for most people is going to be Hangzhou or just various cities in China. But to get there, you're going to want to stop off in some other pretty cool cities like Angkor in the Khmer or Cambodia. You could head to Delhi in India, or some of those great oasis cities in Central Asia like Kashgar, Samarkand. Really, the other hotspot is going to be Baghdad, or the New York City, the post-classical era as I call it. And finally, Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. Or if sand is more your thing, then maybe you'll check out the Trans-Saharan routes thanks to those camel saddles. So again, one end of this is going to be Baghdad, but you might want to pass through Alexandria. Watch out, Mansa Musa is going to destroy their economy. Mansa Musa comes from Timbuktu, the capital of Mali, with that gold salt. And finally, Cordoba, which is really the Muslim capital in Spain, which is also a center of learning. Finally, the most important regional trading route is going to be the Indian Ocean Exchange, which obviously helps Indian cities like Gujarat and Calcutta. But you also have the Swahili Coast city-states. You've got Malacca, which really capitalizes on that strait of, you guessed it, Malacca, and they are a tributary state/city to Hangzhou. It all comes back to China. AP World Units 1 and 2. Today we're going to look at society in the post-classical era, and for part 1 of this video, we're going to talk about common trends across societies, and also we're going to focus on Asia. So across most civilizations in the post-classical era, you have a similar social hierarchy with religious elite and nobility at the top. You work your way down to farmers, artisans, traders, coerced laborers. Most states are patriarchy, and most states are fairly ethnocentric. Now in China, you can see something like foot binding, which is an illustrative example of the patriarchy, but then you also see something like the Confucian scholar gentry, which is sort of an exception, because instead of having a rigid social hierarchy, there are ways for men to work their way up and become socially mobile within the system. Korea does adopt the Confucian bureaucracy, but they eliminate that social mobility aspect because they maintain their aristocracy. And actually in Vietnam, they do something different socially in that they really focus on nuclear families as opposed to extended families, which is more common in Chinese societies. Next up, India and Dar al Islam. AP World Units 1 and 2, we're still talking about society, but now we're going to move over to India. So you have Muslims conquering a mostly Hindu subcontinent, and they do impose the jizya, which is the tax on non-Muslims, but they also continue to practice the Hindu caste system, and Muslims actually just kind of find their way into whichever caste most matches like the job they're already in. The real exception, at least relative to other civilizations at the same time period, is going to be Dar al Islam, which is way more open and accepting. So they are ethnically more tolerant because the Abbasids made Islam a universalizing religion and opened it up to all ethnicities, not just Arab. They also give a higher status to merchants because Muhammad himself was a merchant. They also treat women arguably the best of any civilization or major civilization that we know of in the post-classical era. Now, they do, like many other civilizations, still use enslaved labor. For example, they have the Mamluks, who eventually actually rise up and take over their own state, the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt. Last video, we'll cover the rest of Africa, Europe, and the Americas. AP World Units 1 and 2, we're finishing our discussion of society. In sub-Saharan Africa, their social networks were much smaller and they were often kin-based. They also really centered around oral history and oral traditions, which were led especially by griots, who could be both men or women. Medieval European society is dominated by feudalism and this complex system of relationships between lords and vassals, but a gradual change to European society is going to come partially out of the social practice of primogeniture, which means that the eldest son inherits all the land. Because of this, you have this growing population of second and third sons who might have a lot of opportunity and money and status, but they don't have land, which is the primary source of wealth. And so they're going to become part of a growing bourgeoisie. More on that in the next unit. All right, over in the Americas, you have like an enormous exception in the North American indigenous civilizations in that they were matrilineal. The power descended through the mother's line. In the Aztec Empire, women are important because they weave the cloth that is incredibly important for the tribute system. In the Incan Empire, they actually maintain a lot of their social structures through the Ailu, these kinship-based villages around which the Mita system operates and all these other structures of the Incan Empire.